Welcome to the CraveCast, everyone. I am your host, Eric Mack, live from CNET's Desert Planet Bureau. And I'd like to start by addressing all the members of Starfleet across the galaxy. As you know, Star Trek has been boldly going where no one has gone before for 5 decades now, making it pretty remarkable that the venerable franchise has the energy to continue going so boldly. And so we've gathered here to celebrate 50 years of all things Trek. On the show today, we're going to listen with envy about our colleague Amanda Kooser's trip to the 50th anniversary Trek convention in Vegas, and we'll also be beaming in Kelsey Adams to share her thoughts on the evolution of the character of Lieutenant Uhura with a dash of Trek history. But first, let's check in with the entire crew. For today's voyage from the CNET studios on Earth, it is Jeff Sparkman and Stephen Beecham. And from an undisclosed location somewhere in the galaxy, we've got Bonnie Burton. And then from the Crave satellite in the Albuquerque system, it's Amanda Kooser. How's everyone doing?
Good.
Well,
yeah. I'm regretting I didn't dress up at least like a Klingon. At least like maybe just pretend I'm a robot. That'll work, right?
A replicant.
We usually do.
Okay.
Jeff, you do have your Klingon outfit on, right?
Yeah, but just the lower half. So.
So, like I said at the top there, it is the 50th anniversary this year of Star Trek, a vaunted CBS property. And Amanda, you got to go to the 50th anniversary all the way out in Las Vegas. It was your first convention, and from reading what you wrote, it seems like it was a touchstone moment, a little bit emotional, huh?
Yeah, it was a pretty momentous occasion for me. I was a Star Trek fan from way back, and as a kid, I'd read there were such things as Star Trek conventions and dreamt that someday I would go to one of those, and to finally get to one was, it was emotional. I saw pretty much all the surviving original crew members, and to see them up very close on stage discussing Star Trek topics was quite the thrill, I have to say.
Yeah, there's a photo we've got of you with George Takei, Sulu. What was that like? Was that like a meet and greet where they were kind of shuffling everyone through? Did you get a chance to interact at all, or what?
Oh, that was a fun little thing that happened. It was on a replica of the original Enterprise bridge, which that alone was very thrilling. But it was a pretty quick move through photo opportunity. But that was the one day that I wore my complete Starfleet uniform, my captain's uniform. And I walked in and I was heading towards him, and he looks over and he tells me in his wonderfully deep booming voice that my uniform is a regulation, but that my hair was not. So, I just about melted right there. That was fantastic for me. But I don't think my hair is that much bigger than Janeway's was at some time. So I don't know. Sure. Maybe I could get away with this in Starfleet.
I think it's pretty close. So what were the other highlights for you?
Well, actually, the other fans were a big part of it. The costume contest was pretty spectacular. There were people who had made a Horta, the creature from the original series that eats rocks and its babies are threatened, using mechanics slide. So he had to lay down on the ground in order to shuffle around in this costume. A lot of people put many hours into making their Borg outfits, into making the crystalline entity from the Next Generation. I mean, the creativity level and the passion that went into these was really something to see. And they had Robert Blackman, one of the costume designers from Star Trek, and they had Terry Farrell, who was Dax on Deep Space Nine, as guest judges. So that experience right there was pretty fantastic. Just beautiful work, great creativity.
And so, were you around for? There was some discussion of the best and worst Trek episodes of all time. Were you there for that? Was that happening live?
Yes, I witnessed that, which was I had my favorites for best and worst, but I can't disagree with what they chose. They went with my favorite for the best, which is City on the Edge of Forever, a bit of a time travel episode from the original series. Still stands up. It's a great one. So that one came in for the best episode, and I totally agree with that. And as far as the worst episode goes, that sweet honor went to the TV series Enterprise, which didn't last as long as some of our other Star Trek series, longer than the original, but only by a season. But that series finale was, it was a dog. I mean, they wrapped up the entire series with just a nightmare episode. It's too bad because otherwise that season was pretty strong. But so I can't disagree with that one either. Though I was kind of rooting for Spock's brain from the original series, but I can understand why that didn't make the cut.
I mean, I think you and I and the rest of us are pretty much close to the same age. Maybe Steven's a little younger, but like for me, like the original Star Trek, was before my time, and I'm really a TNG guy. I mean, that's the gold standard for me. Are we all like coming from that same place or no?
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, the Star Trek animated series was kind of like the go-to because it was like Scooby-Doo in space in a way. And it was just, it was like that choppy animation, and it was pretty bad, but the storylines were really interesting. Kind of like with Super or Spider-Man, was it 1967? That animated series, which I'm pretty sure the whole writers' room was on LSD at that point.
Oh yeah.
But when I interviewed George Takei a long time ago when I worked at Lucasfilm, because he was a Clone Wars character, and I asked him about what it was like to film a character for the Clone Wars versus the Star Trek animated series. And with the Clone Wars, he was able to come in and they shoot it like a radio show. They do that with Star Wars Rebels as well, where the whole cast is there and they can play off of each other. But the Star Wars animated series, they all came in individually. I think a lot of that had to do with some animosity with some of the cast members at that point. But he said it was like a totally different experience. So when you watch that animated series, just know that each actor was brought in separately instead of having it be done as a kind of a radio play. But I loved TNG. I mean, I would say Star Trek: The Next Generation got me through college because instead of partying, I would watch that. and so and so I probably graduated on time because of that, because of Picard. And also, I think I wrote my first slash fiction with Picard and Riker. I also had a very interesting erotica short story I wrote with Wesley and a gang of female Klingons. So poor Wesley Crusher. Oh, and I interviewed Will Wheaton for CNET about his time on TNG for, I think it goes up tomorrow for our Star Trek coverage. And it was really interesting to hear him talk about how he became he grew up on that set. He started as a teenager on that set in the 90s. And then just by working with such class actors, became a better actor. And he told me in the interview, which you can read tomorrow, that a lot of the cast members have since come up to him when they are at conventions or whatever and said that they felt like they helped raise him, which he thought was very cool when you think about, all those father figures and mother figures for real. And it's funny because the actress that played Beverly Crusher, that was his mom on the show, actually is really, really sweet in real life. And sometimes they tweet at each other like mother and son on Twitter, and it's hilarious.
Would that be Gates McFadden?
Yeah, that's Gates McFadden. And it's interesting too because like a lot of those actors don't necessarily do Comic-Cons. Like some of them will do the Star Trek stuff like Amanda went to, but they don't really.
Uh-oh. I think we lost her for a second. She'll be back.
So
There
I don't
she
know.
is.
Did I just freeze?
Yes, you did.
There I am. Of course I freeze right when it looks like I'm doing some sort of Shirley Temple move. I'm sorry about that. But anyway, it was really fun talking to Will about his Wesley Crusher days, which is kind of weird because some fans don't really like him. I've always liked Wesley Crusher. I kind of liked the Geordi Wesley Crusher storylines and the Wesley Crusher Data Geordi. It was like Stranger Things grown up. It's like I feel like those guys they should have, instead of playing poker, I always wanted an episode where they were all playing Dungeons and Dragons. I always thought that would be fun.
Oh, that would be awesome on the holodeck.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm very pro Wesley Crusher. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically the character that I would have seen the TNG universe through. He's like the one, because I was his age probably watching it, and he would be like the character you empathize with most. I would think for an entire generation.
Yeah. I mean, the cool thing too is that, he had some really dorky moments as a teenager as that character, but then you also saw him grow up and to be a responsible yet flawed character. And I really wish they would have utilized him more towards later years, but I've always been a big Wesley Crusher fan.
What about you, Amanda? What was
and Whoopi Goldberg, and I do want to say a shout out to Whoopi Goldberg, because Whoopi Goldberg's character, that fulfilled my Star Wars Cantina moment. Like, I loved it anytime they had a scene in that is the forward, right? Is that what they called the bar? I never knew what
10 forward.
10 forward. Why would they? It's a bar.
It is.
I mean, come on. It's not like, Central Perk. I mean, come on. There was some drinking.
It's not the Regal Beagle.
It's not the Regal Beagle.
Oh man, that would have been better.
Oh, that would have been even better. Anyway, continue.
So what was your initial memory, your early Star Trek memories, Amanda, that led you to this 50th anniversary moment?
Yeah, well, my story actually started with my mother, who would often tell me, and still does, that she would watch Star Trek reruns while I was in the womb. And then also when she would sit in a rocking chair with me as a baby and watch Star Trek reruns. And then somewhere around about 4th grade, somehow the timing worked out, and I think it was an after-school slot, but reruns of the original show would come on. And it grabbed me right off the bat, and I became a dedicated viewer. So I actually started off with the original series at a pretty young age. I was super thrilled when Next Gen came out, of course, just to see that continuation on television. So I love that series also. Pro Wesley Crusher, absolutely. But I followed it ever since, across all the series, across all the movies, across the reboots. But it was Kirk, Spock, McCoy, the original crew that really drew me in as a kid.
For sure. What about you guys, Jeff and Steven?
Well, I started a little before Next Gen. I wasn't super into it, and my dad to this day will always mock me because he was always trying to get me. He's all, I think you would really like this. And I'm like, no, because all I remembered from when I was a really little kid was in the end credits when they would show that one frame of the Baylock puppet, that creepy looking alien dude. That used to scare the crap out of me when I was little. It just, I'm like, well, I don't know if I'd really like that. And then, but I would go see the movies. I went to see Star Trek 3 for my friend's birthday party. And then I got really into Star Trek just before Next Generation came out. So as I was finding out all the news and stuff, and actually I still have a sticker of Will Wheaton on my old dresser. It's actually still at my parents' house. They were giving away stickers in boxes of Ziploc bags because, when you think of tie-ins for Star Trek, you think of bags. And so, yeah, it's still on there. Right next to a sticker that came out for the motion picture that I got out of a gumball machine, Mr. Spock.
Nice.
So that's still on there. So, yeah, and actually my very first convention experience was a Star Trek convention. And that was when, it was just after the first season had ended of the Next Generation, because they were telling us all these things about what might be happening in the second season. Like, oh my God, Jonathan Frakes grew a beard. We're not sure if they're going to let him keep it on the show or anything. And it was really interesting.
Those were crazy times.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if anyone can really ever exceed with all apologies to William Shatner, because he is what he is and he's fantastic in his own right, but the gravitas of Shakespearean trained Patrick Stewart at the helm of a starship. I don't know if it ever gets better than that. Am I crazy?
No.
Shatner did Shakespeare too.
Yeah, he was a Shakespearean actor, right? He was he has that delivery,
Yeah, he, let's see.
Could be wrong.
No, I know he has done it at some point, and then I'm pretty sure he did it before he did Star Trek. Because, you can find him doing pretty much anything, after Star Trek got canceled. Doing Shakespeare on talk shows and stuff like that. But he did that, and he was in a pilot, Alexander the Great, I think, with Adam West, I think.
What?
Yeah.
How did I miss that? That sounds incredible.
Yeah, 1964.
Wow. It's like the ultimate supergroup.
Yeah, for reals, right?
Hey, I should also mention I've neglected the chat room. If you do want to join in and share your Star Trek memories, comments, criticisms, whatever with us, the chat room is live on YouTube, or just go to youtube.com/cnet, and we're also on livestream.com/cnet/the CraveCast. Chat room's going there, and also actually a really easy way to get my attention is to tweet at Crave right now, if you want to chime in on the discussion. So we should probably fast forward at warp speed to the present. A lot of Star Trek stuff happening this year and beginning of next year. Star Trek Beyond is out now, and Star Trek Discovery is coming at the beginning of next year, or maybe it's the end of this year. Amanda, are you excited about both of those? Have you seen? I'm assuming you've seen Beyond already, right?
Oh yeah, I dressed up and went to Beyond looking like this. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm a fan of the reboots. I'm an old school Star Trek fan, but when I know not all of them like the reboot series, but I have very much enjoyed it all the way along. But I do think this was by far the strongest entry in the series. It kind of reinvigorated the sort of heart of Star Trek that we like from the original series, that a lot of fans like. So I thought that was a very, very good one. And but the TV series coming up should be very interesting. From my understanding, it's going to take place after the original series, so after the original 5-year mission. So we may be getting some more uniforms like this. I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns about it, but just the fact that we're getting back to an episodic Star Trek series, I think, is a great opportunity for fan excitement coming up here. It could be very good, and I hope it is.
So it's not a prequel or a sequel. It's like an in-between-quel, I guess?
That's my understanding. So after original series, prior to Next Generation, but I mean that gives you some space time. There's a fair amount of time within that they could be setting it. So we'll see.
I've also read that it'll take place 10 years before the original series.
So more like Enterprise is what?
No, because I mean 10 years before the original series isn't really. That would be more like.
So
during the
it's slotted
Cage
between
or
Enterprise
something.
and original series. That's interesting. I'd be curious what it actually is.
And you did some reporting from Las Vegas, Amanda, on some of the takes that the older actors had on some of the newer portrayals, right?
A little bit. They did discuss that a little bit. Actually, that was not one of the big hot topics. A lot of people kind of wanted to hear about the filming experiences of the actors, but George Takei said it was pretty much a rip-roaring great space adventure. So he may have had some issues with how they portray Sulu, but he liked the film overall.
I guess that's what I was thinking of. Our own beloved Kelsey Adams, who was not able to join us live today, she actually pre-recorded so that we could teleport her through space and time, her own take on where a little bit of Star Trek history and where one of the characters from the original cast in particular has taken, and the twists and turns that character has taken over the decades. Do you have that, Stephen?
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
Happy Star Trek 50th. I just saw Star Trek Beyond, the third reboot movie, and it was cute, but they still have no idea what to do with Lieutenant Uhura. Now, originally, Uhura was supposed to be a really positive figure. She was a professional woman, a top-ranking officer, African-American actress. In 1966 on TV, that was a big deal. But a lot of people then and now have looked at this crew and said, well, all the men have glamour jobs and you made the black woman answer the phone? Is hailing frequencies open, Captain, really enough? So how do you update a character? There are different approaches. There's, for example, a long tradition of licensed Star Trek fiction, such as this. Books by known authors with often creepy covers from before Photoshop. And it's kind of like fan fiction, but with more limits and fewer teenage polyamorous wolves. So what they tried to do is say, what would she be like if she were a real person? What is a communications officer? She must know a million languages. She's obviously a diplomat. Or she fixes the translator. She must be an engineer. And they really built her out. Now for the reboot, they just kind of threw all that out. And I think, honestly, the problem was originally Uhura is so ladylike and gentle. She's not a sci-fi tough chick. So they redid it. Modern Uhura is very brave and she fights and stuff. But she spends the first 2 movies just nagging her boyfriend about his emotions while they're in the middle of a crisis. It's not very professional. And then in the 3rd movie, they cut out the nagging, but that doesn't leave anything but girlfriend. Like in big group scenes, she's just standing there like she doesn't know what she's supposed to do. Even in a crisis that literally revolves around the word frequencies, she doesn't solve it. Other people do. So I'm sure that co-writer and fellow nerd Simon Pegg did not forget that she's a communications officer. But maybe he thinks that means social media? Like, perfectly valid job that gets no respect? I don't know. The point is, reboot Uhura is not original Uhura, and that's fine. But you do have to come up with someone for her to be. And when you're thinking about who she is, what do we know about her? She's a Starfleet officer. That's her life. So writers, when you're figuring out Uhura, before you ask yourself who she's dating, ask yourself what her job is. Here's a hint. Queen is already taken.
Bravo,
That's awesome.
bravo.
I love that. I honestly, I think Kelsey needs to do more rants.
Yes.
Because that was amazing. And I agree with her 100%. Like, there's a great scene in it's the Cumberbatch Star Trek. Was it Star Trek Darkness Into Darkness?
Yeah.
There's a great scene when Uhura says, "Oh yeah, I just learned Klingon." Like, she's rusty on her Klingon, and the first time she has to interact with Klingons right when they're about to kill all of them, and she's supposed to speak in perfect Klingon as to not offend these Klingons that are about to kill them on their away mission when they're trying to capture Benedict Cumberbatch character of Khan. And I was like, that's what Star Trek needs more of these reboots. They need to show how detrimental it would be if she screwed up her job. And they also need to show that she never screws up her job. Like, she is really good at what she does. And if you think about having to know Klingon perfectly so you don't get killed, it's kind of like they're just as picky with their language as French are. So that's you don't practice French for the first time in France at a French restaurant unless you want a waiter to spit in your food. So this is a lot less deadly than spitting in food, but this is, I mean, if you're speaking in French to a French waiter, that's what you get. But if you do that to a Klingon, I feel like you become the food. I feel like you would not only get, Klingons don't bother spitting on people, they just kill them. So if you offend a Klingon...
Or they torture them, yeah.
Or they torture them, or I think they just jettison them out into space for fun. I'm sure it's a sport. You just don't screw up Klingon. And that was one of the things that made me really respect Uhura in the new reboots. But then I totally agree with Kelsey. They kind of just turned her into a nagging girlfriend, and she deserves better than that.
Cool. Any other hot takes? What do you think, Amanda?
No, I think Kelsey's rant is great, and this has kind of been a problem throughout Star Trek with, especially when you're looking at the original series characters, with anybody who's not named Kirk, McCoy, or Spock. They often kind of get short shrift in these things, but it is unfortunate, especially I think with Uhura, that they have kind of, she's our lady in there, and I would really love to see a bigger role for her. So hopefully they'll be doing another film. Maybe they'll actually be able to write a little more smartly. I hope they will listen to Kelsey's rant, because that should give them some good ideas as far as what directions to go in.
I'm going to email it to them.
There you go.
It's a bad robot, right?
I will say that in Next Generation, they did a really good job with female characters. I mean, you had a head of, before Worf, the head of security was female. You had a lot of female engineers. You had a lot of, the counselor, the camp counselor, Deanna Troi, is a female, and that's predominantly always a female character, or that kind of character. Same with a doctor type character. Though I always liked Beverly Crusher. I thought she should have been given more storylines, because she had a lot more moxie to offer than they really did. The mother doctor role. And also there were just so many great characters that came in and out of the show, like Deanna Troi's mom was probably one of my favorite female characters in sci-fi, only because I particularly liked any character that annoyed Picard. So that would be Deanna Troi's mom, and of course Q. So, and then there was a female Q later on in the series, where there was a woman that was even more powerful than the Time Lord or Time Traveler Q. So I think Next Generation and also Voyager had really good, strong female characters. And it's if you haven't watched those shows, if you're new to Star Trek or you don't really watch anything past, the Shatner years. You should give those a try because there's some really, really great characters. And I mean, Jerry Ryan playing Seven of Nine again is one of my favorite female characters in sci-fi that really kind of taught the humans how to be human.
I'm so glad you brought up Q because those were like easily my favorite TNG episodes. Did any of those make the top 10 list?
Oh, that's a good question.
I don't know
remember the titles.
top 10, Amanda. Like I don't.
Yeah.
It was weird because like I was looking for more TNG stuff, and I know that they made the bad list, but there should be some more for positive.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, one Kay Adams in the chat room says Bonnie makes a good point about the Klingon scene.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like I'm always afraid when I try to speak different languages in front of the people that speak them natively, because I know some Russian, obviously Spanish. You have to know Spanish in California or pretty much anywhere in the United States. Thank you, Mr. Trump. Hello. Sorry, didn't mean to Trumpize the discussion. But, when you're speaking a language that's not your first language, not only are you worried about messing it up, you're worried about offending people. But, the worst that can happen if you offend someone in their native language is they'll correct you or maybe roll their eyes at you. Klingons will disembowel you. So, like, I really do think Uhura deserves some points for mastering the Rosetta Stone that is Klingon. And that is not an easy language to learn. They offered it at my college as an elective. And
Really?
yeah, and I tried to take it because I was like, oh, this will be easy. It's Klingon. And so I tried to take it in college, and I was like, oh my God, I'm getting graded on this, and I'm really bad at Klingon. So I switched to Russian.
You went to college in Boulder, didn't you?
Yeah. Yes, I did.
Well, what do we know about Discovery? I mean, is there any chance of a female lead in that one?
Yeah, isn't there? Amanda, did you write the story about the female lead? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're being pretty vague about it, but what I've heard is that there will be a female lead, but it may not necessarily be the captain. So that, once again, we don't even know what perspective. Maybe this is not going to be focused on the bridge crew. Maybe it's the people down the galley. Who knows? We'll have to find out.
There was, when I interviewed Will Wheaton about because I asked him what he would be most excited about the new TV series. And Will brought up a really cool idea that probably is not going to happen, but now I want it to, that he wants the new Star Trek series to be like American Horror Story, where it's each season's a different story, but it's the same cast, but they're playing different characters, or have it be like True Detective, where each season's a different location. So it's not always on, a ship, or it's not always on a space station, or it's not always on one planet, but each time they change it up. It's still the same show, but the seasons, it changes the locale. So I thought that would be interesting, but I don't know how experimental they're going to get because it is Star Trek. So there's certain things you have to stick with in order to keep the majority of the fans from, coming at you with torches.
I think that'd be great if there were a more serial element to it, because that's what made the first batch of movies in the 80s, I think, so popular, is because, people were used to the episodic, here's what happens and it's wrapped up in 45 minutes every week. But then with the movies, you had this kind of ongoing saga that was like really brought it to another level. So it'd be great to see that like on the, the television scale where it's an ongoing serial season. I would love that.
I mean, I honestly would love to see Starfleet Academy be the spot where it takes place, because we got a little bit of that in the prequel or in the movies, the reboot of what that looked like and what it looked like to be in a class with a bunch of cadets that are from all different species and races and abilities. And so I kind of had hoped that they would do a show like that, but maybe they're afraid it'll be too CW. Like they're worried it'll be like the Star Trek Diaries. Like they're worried it's gonna that'll be too young. But I would love to see anything in the Starfleet Academy.
I gotta go add CW to the Urban Dictionary as an adjective right now. That's perfect. So Kelsey says there were 3 Next Generation episodes in the top 10: Chain of Command, Yesterday's Enterprise, and The Inner Light. But we don't think any of them are Q episodes.
No, they're not.
But good to know. Good to see Picard well represented in that top 10 for sure. So any other, to wrap it up, I mean, any reflections on a life lived in Star Trek fandom, or where the franchise is headed from here?
Crickets.
Wow.
I would say that I'm excited for the future of Star Trek. I grew up more in the world of Star Wars, and that's where most of my career has been spent, and that's what I know more about than Star Trek. Though I am try sci-fi, not try curious. So I like Doctor Who and Star Wars and Star Trek equally. So I think you're allowed to like them equally. That Star Wars versus Star Trek thing, even though we have it all over CNET, I don't necessarily think it's that big a deal, depending on, I guess, who you talk to. But for me, I like both. So I just want to see more experimentation done with Star Trek. I feel like we have so many great TV shows like Battlestar Galactica and other sci-fi, like Dark Matter, and you have all these different sci-fi realms of entertainment that I think Star Trek didn't have even when Next Generation was out. So I really want them to experiment. Like I would love to see a super like gritty Star Trek series on Showtime, or something where they're allowed to curse, or they're allowed to have sex, like actual sex, and have it be more adult, but at the same time keep the same Roddenberry mythos alive and the Roddenberry feel to it. But I'm excited for this new series. I just hope fans give it a chance, because I know with Star Wars fans, they've had to like reluctantly give up their prequel pain and like move on. And I don't think Star Trek has that same level of pain unless you really, really hated the reboots. But I think it's a really exciting time to be a Star Trek fan. So I want to see a lot more stuff. And I would love to see even a CW show that's Star Trek based. I mean, I know I made fun of CW, but I watch a lot of CW, and I could totally see something on there that's geared towards teens. And I think that would be an interesting take. But I'm excited. I'm excited for the new show, and I watched the new movies, and the most recent one I really liked. But again, I don't go into it with the glasses of I'm a huge Star Trek fan and I'm breaking everything apart piece by piece and dissecting it. I go into everything Star Trek as just like, this is fun and this is exciting and I love sci-fi and these characters are cool to me. So I'm excited.
What do you guys think back there in the studio? You've been quiet. Talk Trek for us.
I'm looking forward to it. I saw the newest movie like a couple weeks ago, and I really liked it. It felt more Star Trek-y to me than the other two did. And, I mean, I enjoyed the other two, but this one was, I don't know. The stuff that I was worried about in the trailer didn't seem as out of place as it seemed in the trailer. So that was nice. And there was a lot more, like, character stuff that I really liked. And I'm looking really forward to the show, because it will just be kind of interesting to have some new Star Trek anything, because it's been a while.
Yeah, I'll definitely give it a shot. Because I'm way into Game of Thrones. If they can make something that's as cool as Game of Thrones, that would be awesome.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I saw the first two movies. I haven't seen the latest movie, but I definitely want to go see it, and that I have to blame that on my two young children that don't let me go out at night. But yeah, I'm very excited about it. It's gonna be cool.
I mean, I would have to echo what Bonnie said, which is I think with the entire Star Trek franchise, at the risk of kind of being sacrilegious here, the earnestness has been almost done to death, and I would really like to see something a little more gritty, a little more edgy, like like you're saying, Stephen, we're in the era of Game of Thrones and the 100 on the CW. I mean, it could be a little edgier, a little grittier, a little, they could get a little dirtier,
I felt like the movies were kind of doing that, like they were a little darker. The latest movies, like they felt a little darker, and like seeing people getting tortured, and
it's true.
It was interesting. I thought it was cool.
It's true. I think it's the right direction to take it in, and it's probably not surprising that J.J. Abrams took it in that direction. But I think I'd love to see it continue that way.
Yeah.
So let's give the final word to Amanda, to the captain. Take your words of wisdom. What's in your captain's log?
Well, Discovery. I'm super excited about this new show coming up. I did double check, and Jeff is absolutely right. This will be set prior to the original series, so that means that technology is not quite as advanced. Should be more advanced than what we saw in Enterprise, at least. But which kind of makes things a little more exciting. More things can go wrong when you don't have as fancy a tools available to you. The fact that it looks like it's not going to be centered on the captain and having a female lead, I think we could be looking forward to a sassier version of Star Trek, which, as we're saying, television has changed a lot. We've got things like Game of Thrones. Battlestar Galactica was an excellent example of what you can do with a grittier sci-fi television series concept. If they can take some of that sort of feel and build it into the Star Trek universe, and as Bonnie said, not lose sight of that Roddenberry heart, I think we're going to be in for a real treat, and I have very high hopes for the new series. So that's really what I'm looking forward to in the Star Trek universe right now.
I'm right there with you, and it will be on CBS in the months coming. For a lot more on everything in the Star Trek universe, there's so much on CNET and on Crave. We actually set up a landing page. It's at cnet.com/Star Trek at 50, Star Trek at 50, and then there's a dash in between each word. So check that out, and also cnet.com/Crave is a great way to find all of that awesome Star Trek information. We thank you so much for watching today. That's the CraveCast for this month. For Bonnie Burton, Stephen Beecham, Jeff Sparkman, and Captain Kooser, I'm Eric Mack. Nice.
I missed the ship flying by. I could probably edit it better.
Oh, Leonard Nimoy.